So today we are working on a new concept, which is talking about independent and dependent quantities. Okay, you may have heard these words before. I want you to look at these three pictures and just think in your head for a minute. We've seen these before. We know that when an input-output machine, when I put something in, something happens here, and then it comes out changed, right? So the output. We look at graphs, and they have an x-axis and a y-axis. And then we can look at tables, right? And tables can be filled with information. And right, something is here, and then there's usually a process, and then it changes. Okay, so that's what we're looking at today. When you see these words, I want you to think about what they are. And you're watching this video with a partner, so I want you to pause, and I want you to talk about these four words. When have you seen them or used some of these words? And it doesn't necessarily have to be in math. Think outside of math, right? Where have you seen these words before? Okay, so you're going to pause and talk about that for just a minute. Okay, so what we see here is an input-output machine. You're going to talk to your partner, right? A number machine with an input and an output is shown. What do you think, going back to those words that we started with, which one do you think is independent and which one do you think is dependent? Okay, so give them a label. So is the input independent? Is the output independent? Talk about what you think it would be. Okay? You can pause to have that conversation. Now, after you've had that conversation, let's look at your little half sheet that's notes. What did you come up with? Well, I know that the input is actually my independent. Okay? And then something happens, and then I know that I get my output, which is going to be the dependent. Okay? And so as I do this, you're going to fill in your notes as well. Remember, you can pause if you need to. So we know here that the independent quantity causes change, and that then gives you the dependent. Okay? So when I think about independent, I know that this is going to be the cause. Okay? And that this is going to be so we're actually gonna, you can actually erase this, and we're gonna keep going. So when I'm looking at how do I find an independent and a dependent quantity, okay? So when I look at this statement, the amount of money I have determines what type of car I can have, or what type of car I can buy. So when I look at this, I want to figure out there's two parts, right? The amount of money that I have, and the amount of money that I have, and the type of car I can buy. Okay? Okay? And now read this statement. The type of car I can buy determines the amount of money I have. Which one of these is a true statement? Talk about it with your friend or your partner. And then what you should notice is that this one makes more sense, right? I can only buy a car if I have the money. I can't go buy a car if I don't have the money. So this statement is a nonsense statement. Let's try it again. The amount of water I drink depends on how often I go to the bathroom. Or the more water I drink, the more often I go to the bathroom. Okay? Which of these makes sense? This one's saying that the cause is if I go to the bathroom depends on no, that's not what I'm trying to say. So when I read this, it's saying the amount of water I drink depends on how often I go to the bathroom. Does that make sense? Or the more water I drink, the more often I go to the bathroom, right? It doesn't, this one makes more sense, okay? So now when we look at our notes, okay, so you should have this filled out on your paper. And now what I know is that the independent is the cause in the relationship, okay? It's the input, so it's what you start with. And then it's always going to be located on the x-axis of a graph. And it's defined by the x values in the table, okay? That means that the dependent is going to be the effect. It's what happens at the end. It's always going to be the output, and it's located on the y-axis, okay? So what that means, if we go back to this question here, and I look at it, the more water I drink, the more often I go to the bathroom. So what happens when I drink water is the effect that I have to go to the bathroom. This one's saying that because I go to the bathroom, the effect is that I drink water. This is the cause, and that's backwards. Okay, so let's look at this graph. Okay, it says to label the quantity in the table with X and Y. So you have to think what makes sense. The weight of my dog is the X value, which means we know it's going to be the independent value, okay? Because it's the cause. If my dog weighs 6 pounds, then he gets 2 grams of medicine. So this becomes the Y, and this becomes the dependent, okay? So then what you can look at is I can then make a graph, okay? I can plot the ordered pairs on my graph. And remember, it says if my dog weighs 6 pounds, then he gets 2 grams of medicine. If my dog weighs 9 pounds, he gets 3 grams of medicine. If my dog weighs 12 pounds, he gets 4 grams of medicine. And a 15-pound dog gets 5. Okay? The last thing it says is to label the axis. Well, because I know that X is I, and that means that Y is going to be dependent. Okay? You don't have this on your paper, but you can just watch and notice. Okay? So then let's look at this one. And again, it works the same way. It says if I have number of weeks, how much money I have. Well, if I save money for 1 week, then I have $11. Okay? So the cause is the number of weeks. The effect is the amount of money that I have in my piggy bank. So that means this is independent and this is dependent, which means this is X and this is Y. Okay? And I can then plot those points on the graph. Okay. So what you're going to do now, oh man, is you're going to take the pink sheet of paper that you have, and it has some squares. On the next page in your math notebook, you're going to glue down this page. Okay, this is going to be your next page. You're going to glue this into your notebook, and then on the next blank page, you're going to give yourself 2 columns. The first column is going to be independent, and the second column is going to be dependent. Okay. Oh no. This is not working. Okay, dependent. Okay. And then you can just draw a line on the middle. And you're going to take the cards and you're going to cut and you're going to figure out, remember, independent is the cause and the dependent is the effect. So you're going to take those and you're going to glue them in. Before you glue them in, you're going to want to check and make sure you did them right because they're pretty tricky. The first one I'm going to give you is the one that we'll do together. And it was the number of cucumbers I have. Right? Spelled that wrong. And I don't know where it goes. I don't know where it goes yet. And then the other one is the amount of pickles I can make. So maybe you knew that you can make pickles from cucumbers. Maybe you didn't, but now you know. So the question is, which is the cause, which is the effect? So you have to think in your head, okay, I know that if I have a certain amount of cucumbers, I can make pickles. If I have the amount of pickles I make is not going to affect the number of cucumbers I have. So I have to think of it this way. The number of cucumbers I have becomes my independent quantity. And that means if I have 2 cucumbers, I can make 2 pickles. If I have 4 cucumbers, I can make 4 pickles. So then the amount of pickles I can make becomes my effect. So your job now for the rest of class is to sort out your independent and your dependent. And then once you check and have those glued in, you can work on your stations, okay? And completing setting up your notebook. All right, awesome job.